Welcome, children. So, working means not working till a certain time. Working means the slaves had to work till night, till dusk, dawn to dusk, and after that they had to perform their personal work, and then she has to walk 12 miles to reach this place where her child was. What can she do to reach there? By foot, not through by vehicle. She has to walk 12 miles to reach her child. She can spend few hours with the child and to reach back her destiny, her working place before dawn. Late means she had to get punishment. Whipping is the punishment. Traveling the whole distance on foot after the performance of her day's work. She was a field hand, as whipping is the penalty of not being at field at sunrise unless a slave has a special permission from his or her master to the contrary, a permission which they seldom get, and one that gives him a proud name of being a kind master. So, contrary means but. In a negative meaning it is considered. If she won't be there at sunrise, she will be punished. She will be whipped severely. Whipping means using what we say chati, whipping in the whip. If she won't reach there at sunrise. Rarely she get permission to reach little bit late. But if she get the permission, the owner is considered as a very kind master. That also 5 to 10 minutes permission, not the full day. A permission which they seldom get, rarely get, almost they won't get. And one that he gives the proud name of being a kind master. So, I do not recollect of overseeing my mother by the light of the day. She was within me in the night. She would lie down with me and get me to sleep, but long before I was walked, she was gone. When she, after finishing all her field work and her own work, and walking 12 miles from there to reach him, the child was asleep. She could lay with him for few hours, just hugging him, and return to her working place before he gets up. And get me to sleep, but long before I walked, she was gone. Very little communication ever took place between us. Death soon ended what little we could have while she lived, and with it her hardships and sufferings. So, what could they had while she was alive? Just few hours at night they could be together. That's also rarely. So that also ended when before he reached 8 years age. Death soon ended what little we could have while she lived, and with it her hardships and sufferings. Slave means it's an alternative synonym for hardship and suffering. She died when I was about 7 years old, not even 8. Around 7 years old, not exact age, on one of my master's farm near Lee's Mill. I was not allowed to be present during her illness. After she suffered few time the illness, but the son was not permitted to be with her during her illness and also her death and burial. Burial means the performances what we do after the death. He was informed that his mother was dead after some days of her death. I was not allowed to be present during her illness. At her death or burial, she was gone long before I knew anything about it. So, about the death of his mother, when he came to know, it was long before she went off. Never having enjoyed to any considerable extent, he never enjoyed much more about his mother's affection, her soothing presence. Soothing means consoling presence. The touch of a mother consoles the child. The embrace of a hug of a mother gives confidence to the child. A touch gives relief from all problems, all worries to a child. But he couldn't get any of these as he was separated from his mother before he reached 12 months baby. Never having enjoyed to any considerable extent her soothing presence, her tender and watchful care. Normally, mothers used to care the child. Don't go there, you may fall down. Wear the shoes, pricks your that stone or thorns may prick your leg. They care, but I couldn't enjoy. I did not get opportunity to enjoy any of these tender and watchful care of my mother. I received the tidings. Tidings means news. I received the tidings of her death with much the same emotions I have probably felt at the death of a stranger. Stranger means unknown person. If somebody gave the information about an unknown person's death, how could I react? The same way I reacted, because that motherly affection I did not enjoy at all. I did not call her as mother at all, because before I attained 1 year, she was separated from me. And moreover, whenever she came after finishing work, rarely, so rarely also, I was deep in sleep, and she could lay down with me for a few hours and return to her working place before the dawn. So I could not enjoy her tender care, touch, or anything else. So I received the news of her death as I received the death news of some stranger. Called thus suddenly away, she left me without a slightest intimation of who my father was. Frederick Douglass, he felt so sorry for his mother's death, not because she is his mother, just because she did not give, or she did not give any intimation or information about his parentage, who his father was. Called by somebody, by Yama or somebody, thus suddenly away, she left me without the slightest intimation. Slightest intimation also she did not give who my father was. Only she could have been given, but she didn't. Before he reached 7 years or 8 years, she passed away. Then who had to answer him about his father and all? Nobody. So source also he didn't get. The whisper that my master was my father may or may not be true, and true or false, it is of but little consequence of my purpose, whilst the fact remains, and all its glaring odiousness, that slaveholders have ordained and by law established that the children of the slave woman shall in all cases follow the condition of their mothers, and this done too obviously to administer to their own lusts and make gratification of their wicked desires profitable as well as pleasurable, for by this cunning arrangement the slaveholder, in cases not a few, sustained to his slaves the double relation of master and father. The whisper that my master was my father may or may not be true. He was not sure whether his master himself was his father or not. It may be true or may not be true, true or false. It is of but little consequence. Consequence means result to my purpose, whilst the fact remains. Whilst means the Old English usage, while. This Old English form. In all its glaring odiousness means horribility. Glaring odiousness means Horribility. Horribility in all its glaring odiousness that slaveholders have ordained and by law established that the children of slave women shall in all cases follow the condition of their mothers. This is really horrible. These slave women, they are slaves. Anyhow, the masters purchased them, and the children of those slave women are also should follow the rules and regulations of these slave women and remain as slaves for these masters. That's really horrible. And this is done too obviously to administer to their own lusts. It's really obviously, too worst. Administer to admit to their own lust. Lust means, what do you see? Sexual want, we can say sexual attachment, own lust, and make gratification of their wicked desires profitable as well as pleasurable. So, pleasurable because they use a sexual contact with their own slaves. Profitable because the children who born to these slave women will be slaves only and continue to be slaves, and they need not purchase new slaves to increase the number of slaves in their group. So such horrible, such worst situation was there for slaves. Whether that slave agree or disagree, it doesn't matter, it never mattered, because they were slaves and they had to agree whatever these masters decide. For by this cunning arrangement, the slaveholders, in cases not a few, very few may be exemption, but the slaveholders sustain to his slaves the double relationship of master and father. But they won't disclose that they are their fathers. Why? Because their wives, they never accept it. I know of such cases, and it's worthy to remark that such slaves invariably suffer greater hardships, invariably, continuously. Suffer greater hardships and have more to contend with. Contend means satisfy with than others. So why these slaves, the children of these slave women suffer from more hardships? Because they are in first place a content offense to their mistress. When these mistress, the master's wives, they notice that their husband keep a sexual relationship with slave, they don't like that, but they can't oppose it also. But before the child attains 1 year, the mother is separated, hired by somebody else's, and this child, when it grow up, it had to fulfill all the rules and regulations and the needs of a slave only, and they get another slave for their group, for their assistant, or say their workers group. So, but she suspects that he may be the son of her master. So she don't like that. She continuously hate that, and even this hatred is imposed on their children or her own children also, and they also oppose these slave children who are of same age. She is never disposed to find fault with him. They can seldom do anything to please her. She'll never better pleased than when she sees them under the lash. Lash means whip. Whip means punishment with the, a small stick to which this long cow's skin or its intestine, dried intestine is tied, and to its end a small pebble is tied, so that when they beat with that, it will be horribly painful. Especially when she suspects her husband of showing to her mulatto children. Mulatto children means the child of a black and white parent. Black parent is his mother and white parent is his master. Mulatto children favors which he withholds from his black slaves. When this mistress suspects that her husband shows little bit favor to these children, mulatto children, than other slaves, then the condition of these slaves, the slave children, will be horrible. Then she feels sure that her husband had sexual relationship with this child's mother. So they can she is never disposed to find fault with them. She searches opportunity to punish them, to scold them, to find fault in them. But they can seldom do anything to please her. They try their level best to please her. They can't, because she always shows the hatred on them. She is never better pleased than when she sees them under the lash, especially when she suspects her husband showing his mulatto children favors which he withholds from his black slaves. Especially when she notices that her husband shows little favor for his mulatto children, she finds pleasure or happiness only when they are whipped, punished severely. As I told, whip means an instrument which is used to punish especially horses, buffaloes and all. You might have been seen that running of these buffaloes, Kambala, they use this whip to make them to run fast. A stick to which a rope is tied, but here to punish these slaves, rather than rope, cow's skin or intestine is tied, at the end of which there will be a stone, and while beating it will be too severe and too painful. The master is frequently compelled to sell this class of his slaves. This mistress, they compel their husband to sell these slaves. Which slaves? These mulatto children. Out of deference to the feelings of his white wife, and cruel as the deed may strike anyone to be, for a man to sell his own children to human flesh mongers, it's often to dictate of humanity for him to do so. For unless he does this, he must not only whip them himself, but must stand by and see one white son tie up his brother, but few shades darker complexion that himself, and play gory lash to his naked back, and if he lists one word of the disapproval, it set down to his parental partiality, and only makes a bad matter worse, both for himself and the slave to whom he protect and defend. Just imagine, if she suspects that his mulatto children, the child is of her husband's, she makes him to sell, she compels him to sell for human flesh mongers. That means who sell human flesh, who kill him and cut his flesh and sell. Just imagine. And cruel as the deed may strike anyone to be, we may think it's so cruel, but it was the fact. For a man to sell his own children to human flesh mongers, this owner had to sell not the slaves, his own children. Maybe his mother a slave, but his own child, no. He had to sell these, she compels these children to sell for human flesh mongers, and it's often dictate of humanity for him to do so. So he had to do, he is compelled by the mistress to do so. Unless he does this, if he won't do this, he must not only whip them himself, he had to whip them himself. Whip means whip, sorry, very sorry, whip, WHIP, whip them himself, but must stand by and see one white son. If he is not ready to sell these children to human fleshmongers, he had to just whip those children severely, and also stand and watch that his own son, his wife's son, little bit darker complexion brother is punished by white brother with the whip them himself, but must stand by side and see one white son tie up his brother, this mulatto child, but a few darker shades complexion than himself, and apply the gory lash. Ply means used to tool skillfully. Which tool here? Whip. Lay the glory lash to his naked back, and he lisp. Lisp means utter. If he lists one word of no, he can't say. The bad matter become worse. She may kill him there itself, for himself and the slave whom he protect and defend. Such is the condition. That means one can't believe now slavery is not there, everything is okay. But this condition was prevailing in these slaves, and they were almost dead, although they are alive. Just whipping, just with hands itself, pains us a lot. Just imagine, not with hands, not with stick, not with ruler, not with scale, but whipping with whip. Whip means, as I told, a stick with why cow skin rather than this rope? Because when they whip it, the skin of the person who take the punishment will come off with the cow skin, what they tie to that stick, and it will start bleeding there. And the person who punishes, who whips him, will whip to the same place to make the blood to flow more. It had to bleed extraordinary, and the whole situation will be worse for the viewer. Still, this mistress, she won't feel pity, because the hatred towards these children and the feeling that her husband had kept a sexual relationship with this mulatto child makes her so cruel that she feels happiness only by seeing him under the lash. So, such is the situation of these people, these slaves, to suffer. If he is not ready to sell them to human fleshmongers, the person himself had to whip or to use this lash, use this glory to this on his child. Severely he had to punish. Together with, after he gets tired, he had to stand and watch. In front of him only, his white son, his wife's son, white son means wife's son, will tie his black brother. Black means little bit darker complexion, tie somewhere and whip him severely, and he had to watch. He was not supposed to show little bit mercy, even a single word also. He was not supposed to open his mouth to tell also. And moreover, sound of mercy may make this condition worse for himself and the child. Such was the condition of the slaves. But these children, these mulatto children, it's for none of their fault they get punishment. The fault is the masters. The fault is the masters, but not the children, but they get punishment severely to the happiness of this mistress. And in such a condition, Frederick Douglass, born, brought up, and reached to 20 years and then escaped from slavery. Anyhow, from Maryland, he could be able to escape from slavery and fought against slavery to eradicate it. Okay, I'll continue in the next class.